Jeff said that this was a continual problem, the smell, that his neighbors, the building supervisor complained about the smell.
Sir Backlipper Princewell was in charge of Dahmer's apartment building and had to deal with the complaints.
Somebody told me that it is coming from his apartment. And so I had to call him and ask him, what's going on? Can't he clean up or what?
How did that go?
I'd either blame it on the freezer or the fish tank.
He said he almost passed out. What was in that?
3 headless torsos.
Yeah.
Stripped of flesh.
The man who brought an end to Dahmer's reign of terror was 32-year-old Tracy Edwards, who, after escaping from Dahmer, was running down the street with a pair of handcuffs on one wrist when he managed to flag down a passing police car.
Had the officer been able to unleash that handcuff, that may have been the end of it. So they went back to Dahmer's residence.
Jeff opened the door. They said who they were and what they wanted, but Jeff didn't have the key for the handcuff because the way he got the handcuffs back from his victims was by cutting off their hands.
When they entered the apartment, one of the officers saw some pictures in a bedroom of a skinning of a human being, looked at the pictures, was surprised, then looked around the room and realized he was in the very room where those pictures had been taken. He yelled out to his partner, "Grab him."
When I arrived, I saw Dahmer was arrested on the ground, handcuffed, and I was told by the officers to look in the refrigerator. At this time, when I did open up the refrigerator, what I found in there was an empty refrigerator with a cardboard box containing a freshly severed head of a black male. The eyes and the mouth were open. It should be stated that the interior of the refrigerator was immaculately clean. In the back was a box of Arm & Hammer baking soda, and on the side were condiments, mustard, ketchup, A1 sauce. And I felt fear from the bottom of my feet all the way to the top of my head. You can't make sense of anything that looks so bizarre.
Dahmer's killing spree was finally brought to an end. What was motivating Jeffrey Dahmer to kill, dismember, and eat his victims? Was he sane or insane? Jeffrey Dahmer was just 18 years old when he took the life of his first victim. 9 years later, he was driven to kill again. It was after this that the killings escalated. He continued to kill, and for years he got away with murder. No one suspected the mild-mannered, good-looking middle-class boy of any further wrongdoing.
In a long list of these, I mentioned the judge that commuted his sentence, the first police officer that let him go in Ohio. When he first got out, he was on probation, but not once during his entire time of being on probation did a probation officer come to his apartment, much less make a surprise visit to his apartment. Also, he was under court order to see a psychologist every month. And some of the days, he had just killed somebody over the weekend and chopped them up and threw them away, and then he was sitting in talking to the psychologist, putting on a front, and being cleared to go.
This time was different. They had him in custody, and they weren't about to let him out of their sight. Knowing that it was all finally over, Dahmer signed away his rights to an attorney. From midnight into the early hours of the next morning, he started unveiling the wicked truth behind his evil acts.
He didn't tell us about eating people right away. In the freezer part of the refrigerator, they found individually wrapped and prepared body parts. The thigh, bicep, heart, liver.
As Kennedy continued his interrogation, the most pertinent question was why.
There was mental illness in his family, and that's not a stigma. I mean, a lot of our families have mental illnesses. The fact that there was a lot of arguing going on between his mom and dad when he was growing up. The fact that he felt abandoned. I mean, all these things together, could they produce? Who knows?
Had his desertion as a teenager left Jeffrey with a fear of abandonment that affected his adult life?
We had discussions about love, because I said, Jeff, why don't you just have a regular boyfriend, you know? I mean, and then you wouldn't have to kill these people. He said, people always left. I could never get anyone to stay with me. So I saw that the only way I can keep them with me was by killing them. But by actually eating the person, that this young man actually became part of Jeff Dahmer.
Dahmer did state that he was, there was not a
victim of his crimes that he did not personally love and would like to have stayed with on a permanent level. It all boiled down to the same routine. When they were going to leave, that's when they died.
Even Dahmer himself can't provide an explanation.
What do you account to the fact that you're getting into this so often?
The fact that I was desperately trying to make it so satisfied, but it never did completely.
But was it just a simple case of not being able to find what he was looking for?
You met somebody who consensually would set up a living arrangement with you. Would you have abandoned then the procedure that you stayed with?
The person would have had to be totally compliant, willing to do whatever I wanted. It's just heartbreaking people like that.
That's true.
There was never any doubt that Dahmer committed these heinous crimes. His 60-hour confession and the insurmountable evidence was to solve a complicated question. Was Dahmer sane or insane? If the court found Dahmer sane, he would spend the rest of his life in prison. If they judged him insane, he would go to a psychiatric hospital from which one day he could possibly be released. Prosecutor Michael McCann had a different approach to the trial.
We have in Wisconsin what's called a bifurcated trial. We use the same jury, but we do it sequentially. First, did he do the slayings? Secondly, was he sane or insane at the time? So the second part of the trial was the real issue. That went on for several weeks in this very courtroom.
Dahmer called on his old defense attorney, Gerald Boyle. Boyle felt his client had to be insane.
Killing didn't obviously mean anything to him. He had no conscience.